watching this video, you will improve your understanding of behavioral patterns of Germans and people in Germany alike, even if the information alone will not relieve you from the necessity of using your intercultural competency in encounters with Germans. Before summarizing cultural standards of Germany, let me briefly make some remarks. In case you have heard these remarks already, you may want to skip this part. Please be aware of the situational and personal reasons for certain behavior you observe in encounters. Cultural reasons might be an explanation too. Nevertheless, we should always focus on the individual first. Using cultural standards has the potential of leading to new stereotypes and prejudices. However, contrary to stereotypes and prejudices, cultural standards were concluded from systematic analysis of real, everyday and experienced behavioral routines, which received scientific validation through further research. Cultural standards do not develop randomly or by accident. Cultural standards are rather deeply rooted in the history of a society. They present a result of an ongoing interaction of humans with the circumstances as well with social, political and economical happenings. Cultural standards can be seen as an answer of all individuals of a society on the challenges and needs of a certain period of time. We can state here that cultural standards, they follow history in a long-term process of adaptation. Of course, cultural standards are never absolutely binding and therefore include a room to maneuver for individuals. Nevertheless, the behavior of others within the respective culture gets perceived and evaluated by comparison to cultural standards. Own behavior gets steered and regulated. Cultural standards could be seen as columns and pillars of a building which represents a culture, and cultural standards do provide orientation. The existence of cultural standards is, like cultural socialization in general, not obvious and therefore often only receives attention in a critical intercultural interaction. Before starting with the cultural standard, German objectivism, let me just remark on the cultural dimension behind this cultural standard. The opposite of the orientation towards objectivism, the orientation towards a task on hand, the next duty or the current agenda, is the orientation towards a relationship and towards the people we are with. Germany belongs to those cultures with the greatest focus on objectivism. Whilst working in a company, the focus is on work and only work. Whilst being with people in the local football club, it is football or the agenda for the upcoming Christmas party of the football club. When visiting a class in the adult education center, the focus is on the topic of the class. And when learning on an instrument, for example in a music school, people do not waste much time for blah blah, and doctors, they keep short when speaking to patients. Briefly speaking, not much time is lost and used to speak about private issues, about the current well-being, the family or leisure time. The cultural standard of objectivism has led to Germans' reputation of being rather cold and unapproachable. However, often people in longer interaction with Germans see pretty soon that German objectivism is a general tendency, but Germans do also socialize despite this orientation. In Germany there is a tendency of coming to the point pretty quickly. Cooperation does not necessarily need friendship. The communication in and between enterprises in Germany is not the communication between, for example, Thomas Mayer and Katharina Schmidt, but rather the communication between the key account manager and the purchaser. People encounter each other in their respective role, in their positions and qualifications. Friendship is a rather pleasant side effect. By the way, if your German colleague in the beginning of your cooperation overwhelms you with information, insights and offers to help, this is on the level of a relationship a clear sign of the highest possible readiness for cooperation, a good sign to start to work with each other. Rules and structures, they enjoy great appreciation in Germany. Some say there were more rules than countable. There are implicit rules such as punctuality and friendliness. There's specific rules like apartment house rules or rules for sorting your trash in the different garbage cans. And on top there are all sorts of structures that are hardly questioned. The existence of structures and the subsequent predictability provide people in Germany with a feeling of security and safety. In Gerd Hofstede's research, Germany reaches a high level of uncertainty avoidance. The culture standard of appreciation for rules and structures can be seen in an intense bureaucracy, for example, or in the circumstance that landlords, neighbors or even foreigners point on mistakes and draw your attention to the rules. A Californian student of mine used to comment on that and on his experience by saying, "Every German is a policeman." In general, we can say that Germans or people in Germany take their jobs and their responsibilities very seriously. Organizing and planning is done with a lot of passion. While a meeting in a French company serves to easily exchange viewpoints and opinions, meetings in Germany are there to work out plans. Subsequently, everyone is expected to live up to this plan and carry out the individual contributions so that everyone can rely on everyone else. Rules are, following the principles of the European era of enlightenment, binding for everyone, without exception for status or relatives. Rules are internalized, which means that people in Germany follow these rules because of an inner intrinsic motivation. They want to follow rules. This leads to rules being seen as natural. Rules define what and who is good and who is bad. And therefore following the rules has as well an emotional and a moral significance. The culture standard of time planning is mainly known through German punctuality, but contains a lot more than this. Future is not only planned surprisingly well in advance, but also a lot of effort is put into precisely carrying out plans. People in Germany follow a distinctive monochrome attitude towards time, which needs the exclusive dealing with one certain task at one time, without distraction and a one after another sequence. The disadvantage of this cultural standard is a low flexibility and a low tolerance for frustration when plans do not work out. Because of the culture standard of time planning, Germans are often seen to be predictable. The different living spheres, professional and private life, are widely separated. People who were socialized in Germany often even strongly change their behavior and communication style according to the situation, the kind of their relationship and the private or professional context. Separation is essential in rational and emotional things, role and person, and the level of formality. To illustrate this culture standard, I would like to use an anecdote of a frequent experience foreign students keep on reporting to me after they were partying with their German fellow students. After the experience, foreign students asked themselves which mistake they had made or which faux pas they walked into. The idea they must have done something wrong frequently arises the day after the club night or party, when they walk into university, meeting their German fellow students, finding their cold behavior quite irritating. So what had happened? After partying and celebrating emotionally, German students on the day after slip into their rational and professional role without being aware of a change of their own behavior. This unconscious shift of the way they behave and appear to others receives attention and irritation amongst the much more relationship-oriented and in large parts more high-context communicating students from abroad. Those foreign students seek the mistakes on their side. In fact, and on a regular basis, expatriates from abroad report how difficult it was to get into a more private and relationship-oriented contact with Germans. This can be seen as a consequence of the segmentation of living spheres. Private relationships in Germany are not established easily, but rather through things that people have in common in their biography or common interests and leisure time activities. Those hobbies are often carried out in clubs, and therefore it is recommendable for expatriates coming to Germany to meet Germans exactly there in clubs, playing table tennis, playing soccer, or even there is clubs for playing chess. The German style of communication is described as low context style and belongs together with the Dutch culture to the most direct communication cultures of this world. Whilst in other cultures people often speak rather between the lines or in a roundabout way, people in Germany and Holland tend towards explicitness and directness. What is important needs to be spoken out. People try to be clear and unambitious. No means no, and no is not an unfriendly word, and a denial is mostly expressed very directly. This leads to a perception of Germans in an international context as being rather undiplomatic. Very often Germans tend to not recognize sensitivities of others simply because these sensitivities are seldomly expressed directly, which in some cases might lead to hurtful statements. The fact that the English rather not want to share their political views too openly, to leave space for others, or that the Turkish probably do not want to speak about controversial politics of their country is often not realized by people who usually rather focus on spoken words and sentences than on body language and the context. Germany shares the culture standard of individualism, which together with other European cultures, which on the other side leads to an emotional distance towards groups and groups in general. Personal independence is appreciated. The children move out of the parents' household as soon as they earn a proper salary, and an own and self-confidentially expressed opinion is expected from a mature adult. The primal identity is the own personality and not the family, the regional origin or nationality. The motto could be, I am myself, I have my own goals and plans, my own biography and own experiences. Probably we people in the global north first have to become aware that the majority of mankind rather lives in collective, group and family-oriented cultures in which the described normalities in individualistic cultures are seen differently. People communicate in another way. They try to keep harmony. They try to save face, and their own opinion is not that important as it is for people in the global north. Very unknown is also the fact that arranged marriage, in contrast to love marriages in this world, are a lot more common in collective societies, and the majority actually has arranged marriages. A clear sign for the collectivistic imprint of cultures. Please also have a look at the topics of individualism and collectivism, the attitude towards time and low and high context. These topics have the potential of giving you an even deeper insight into phenomena to be found in German culture. You will find the necessary links underneath this video on YouTube and on your respective online learning platform. You might also want to have a look at these two videos explaining German culture standards in a nutshell, both by the Goethe Institute. Let me just briefly summarize German culture standards. The first and most important German culture standard is objectivism instead of a relationship orientation. There's an appreciation of rules, regulations and structures, but not only this. Rule orientation is also an internalized control of people. There's time planning done, and there's a separation of living spheres. There's a low context style of communication and individualism. I would like to recommend the book Doing Business with Germans. The German version is called Die Deutschen, wir Deutsche. The author of the book, Sylvia Schroll-Machl, who herself gave many seminars for expatriates and foreign experts coming to Germany, collected experiences and anecdotes which these people had with the Germans. She categorizes the experiences in the Menschenkopf categories. There is funny stories, there's embarrassing ones, some to cry and some to recognize the cultural imprint of Germans, or for Germans the own cultural imprint, of course. Let me just highlight this. The awareness for the own cultural imprint is an important step towards intercultural competence. Sylvia Schroll-Machl's book can be found through the links underneath this video. On YouTube, I will appreciate your like, I will appreciate your comments, and of course please subscribe to this channel. In online and blended learning courses, I will appreciate your contributions and of course your feedback.